Okay, so here is another recording I'm doing. Once again, kind of going over some of the functionality that we have available to us inside of Axis that we'll be using as part of our project. All right, so this um, focus of this particular recording is on querying and development of queries and the different types of queries we can use to get data out of a database. Okay, so what we have is we're back to our Sam's Club database here. We see we have our four tables. Okay. So what a query is basically it's asking a question to a database and then getting a result back. All right. Once again, as we said, it's based upon um, this idea of relational algebra, which is a mathematical theory of mathematics based around set theory and how different sets can align with each other. All right. So within this, the way a relational database works is each table is considered a set. And what you can do is you can analyze, you can ask a query of each set and be able to give criteria and then get a result back based upon the question you ask. All right. So the where you get the queries or how do you get the queries is actually under this uh, create tab or create top down. You'll see if you click create, well, you'll see a whole bunch of different things you can create. So you can create tables, you can do table design. What we're looking at here is something we call queries. All right, so queries and query designs. There's a query wizard which actually will ask you a bunch of questions. So we'll build a query, can build a query for you. But what we're going to focus on is query design. So I'm going to click this. And what it comes up with is the screen, the query screen is a couple different pieces to it. Number one is along the top, what we have is, you know, the different types of queries we can run. So there's something called a select query, which is specifically designed to create a table, or excuse me, to pull, like to extract data from a table. You ask a question, you say, give me, from this table, I want to see this result, and it will execute it and bring back the result. All right. We also have a make table query. So what you can do is you can take the results of a select query and use it to create a whole nother table. And we'll show you, we'll take a look at that. That's actually pretty useful in some cases. And a pen query will tack data onto the back of an existing table. So if you have a table of 1,000 rows, you can throw another 1,000 rows onto the back of it. We have an update query. All right, so an update query will allow you to make changes to the data that are already in the table. We have a crosstab, which is an analytical tool that can be used for being able to identify certain relationships inside of data. And then finally, we have what we call a delete query, which is basically it allows us to delete data that would be in a table or a set of tables. And a couple others, here we have a union, which is the combination of two tables together. Data definitions, pass-through, which are some other more specialized kind of queries. But what things we're going to be working with for the most part are going to be select queries, um, update queries, and make table queries. Those are the three we're going to work with for the most part in our Sam's Club exercise. So we'll do a real basic one here. So what I'm going to do is, I want to run some query. I want to pull some data out of, I'm going to analyze some information out of the store's visits. All right. So all you do is when you start this up, it'll give you a show table. You do an add. All right, and that's the tape. Basically, that will give us what we want to, basically the list of all the fields that are in the table and all the fields that are in the table. So what we're going to want to do is we can select one field or many fields. All right, so what I'm going to do here is we're going to pull all the fields. We're going to run a query against all of the data. So I can just highlight everything, just do a drag down here, and it'll populate this grid. All right. So the grid here, this is actually this is actually where we do the kind of the programmatic stuff. We set the criteria for what we want to get for the results. All right. If I don't put any, so if we look at this, so what we'll have is we have a field, we have the table name is associated with the field. We have a sort, so we can sort data if we're so inclined. We have a show versus no show. So if I click this, when we execute the query, it will show the field. If I unclick it, it will still execute the query, but it will not bring back that field. And then we have criteria. So we have criteria A, or we have criteria B, or we have criteria C, or we have criteria so on and so forth. I think you can do like 5 or 6 per each field. All right. So what happens is the way we would read this is, for each one of these fields, we will set the criteria of what we want to see. So we won't set anything. So we'll do the first one. All right. So I've actually have set this up. So we're going to take store visits. I want to look at all the data that's in the store visits table. All right. So having set this up, I dragged and dropped all of that information into our fields. All right. I click run. And what it will do is it will return what looks like another table. But this is the result set. The way SQL and relational databases work are when you're combining tables or looking at a table, the result you get looks like another table. So, if I have this table, I want to find I'm looking for certain data out of that table, it will give me, the result I get back is another table. All right. So we can come to view. So you can kind of switch between views here. So this is another area you want to take a look at, this idea of the view button. All right. So the view, we'll see a datasheet view. We'll see a design view. So these are the two that we'll be using more. Actually, we'll be toggling between datasheet views and design views. All right. So the design view is what this looks like. All right. This is kind of what the query setup is. All right. The results view or the datasheet view is what the executed query brings back. And there's 39,435 rows in this table. All right, so it just basically said, give me this query here. Basically said, give me all the rows that are in this. Give me everything. So there's nothing qualified. All right. So what I can do though is I can actually start qualifying. I can put some qualifications around and kind of reduce that field. All right, so let's take, for example, we'll look at our transaction date. So transaction date is here. All right, so let's take a look. Let's execute the query again, which will run. We'll look at the transaction date. So we've got a bunch of dates here. So 1/2/2000, all right, would be a transaction date. So say, for example, we want to see everything that was all of the visits that occurred on 1/2/2000, right, January 2nd, 2000. All right. The way we would do this is we would go back into our design view, and we would go to the transaction date, and the criteria would be, we would say equals 1/2/2000. All right, so what we're saying here is, give me everything that's in this table that will match a transaction date of 1/2/2000. If I run this, all right, we'll see all of a sudden, it gives me the same results, basically the same results, but we only have instead of 39,000, we only have 1,000. All right, so on that day, so if we look at this result set, all right, this is everything that happened on 1/2/2000. This is all the visits that happened on 1/2/2000. Okay, I'll just scroll through this. Now, you can start combining things. So we'll say, let's look at everything that was done on 1/2/2000. And what I want to do is, I want to see everything that had a total scan greater, or total, we'll say total unique items, sorry, total unique items that were purchased, we want to see something that's greater than 5. All right, so what this is telling us is, okay, on the 2nd of January, I want to see every person, for every order that came in, I want to see everything that would be greater than 5. All right, so if it's greater than 5, that would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on up to infinity. Uh, One thing to remember when you look at some of these criteria, greater than does not mean greater than or equal to. All right, so if I say it's greater than 5, that means 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I say greater than or equal to 5, it would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. All right? So I'm going to say, okay, we want to see everything that happens on January 2nd that somebody bought more than 5, had acquired more than 5 uh, items. Okay, so let's execute this query. So what we got is of all of those 1,000 plus visits, there were 393. 393 of these were actually had more were purchased more than 5. All right, which actually is also some interesting information. So once again, this is kind of, if you think of this as we're asking questions. So this is a single. So this is a pretty simple query, but we're asking questions about this. So say for example, we don't want to see we don't care about a lot of these fields. All right, but we can just leave it here. Either we can delete the field, or what we can do is we can actually instead of showing that data, we can just unclick the show. All right, if we just keep unclicking everything, we'll just take a lot of stuff out here. All right. Actually, we'll leave the visit number, and we'll leave the other stuff blank. All right, we'll run it, and all of a sudden, what we see now is we've reduced it sideways. All right, there's still 393, so the criteria is still transaction date of 2000, scan count or unique items greater than 5, which would be 6. So if you note all the numbers here, it's everything greater than 5 as we scroll through here. All right, so there's 393. But what we did is by unclicking the show, it doesn't, it will not return it. It'll analyze it, it will evaluate it, it just won't show it on the return set. So I can add it back in. So it's as simple as that. So we've added register back in. All right, so that's kind of the basic mechanics of a query. So let's extend this just a little bit. All right, so something else I want to show you here under this view, the middle part of this SQL view. So what we're looking at here is something that's called the term, or what this particular means of querying is called a QBE, or query by example. All right, so this is a kind of a graphical display version, allow you to kind of point and click and do things like that. There's another view. Basically, there's another way of being able to execute SQL, which is what we call actually SQL commands. So what you see here is actually the same query stated in the form of a series of SQL commands. So this is the select query. So this is the way we would read this is select, these are all the field names from the table, and we say where the store visit date is equal to 1/2/2000, and the item count is greater than 5. All right, so this is the format of it. All right, so, and actually, in large part, most applications, most interfaces into SQL databases are usually done through SQL commands. All right, so if you look at SAP, you look at all of these different kinds of applications that are working with SQL databases, usually you'll see these types of commands embedded in the programs. All right? But for our case, because what we're doing is we're trying to explain some of the concepts around querying. The QBE actually makes a nice way to be able to grasp how this stuff looks conceptually, as opposed to having to work into, operate in the weeds of, inside of writing the code and whatnot. But the two of these, so this is the exact same thing though, is this. All right, it's just presented a different way. Okay, so we've done that. So there's another form. So I'm going to do what I'm going to demonstrate right now is I'm going to demonstrate two things. Number one, a couple examples of the select query, and then I'm also going to demonstrate make table query in this particular in this particular video, and then I'm probably going to do a couple other examples of stuff so you get some more familiarity with the stuff and kind of walk through it and get familiarized with it. All right. So what I'm going to do now is, okay, I'm going against the visits table. All right. Now, but the detail, say for example, the detail of what we are actually looking at, what we want to get is actually in the item scanned. Because what happens is there's a visit, which is kind of the high level, is kind of the high level of activity that we've captured in the table. But then we've also got this that's the visits. But the item scanned is actually what we actually bought. So say for example, we've identified these items greater than 5 that all happened on 2000. We want to see the detail, what was actually purchased on those days. All right. And the way we can do that is we can extend this query and add in basically link the visits table to the scan table. All right. The way we do that is we do a join. And the way a join works, we'll just do a double click on this. Oh, that's our table. That's our item scan table. So there's 198,000 rows in this table. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here. I'm going to do a show table. So we have store visits already in the query. I'm going to add item scan to the query. Do an add. Okay, we'll close it. All right, so I've got two tables here. Now, one of the things that's kind of neat about Access, and it's only this is kind of a feature of Access that maybe not every database has, is when you add two tables together, it will automatically detect what the keys are. All right, if you've got what the field would be. So the idea is that if you have two tables, you have to have a common field, which is equal, so that you can tie them together. All right, this is how you join tables together over a common key. So in this case, the common key between the store visits and the item scanned is the visit number. All right. So what we're going to say now is, okay, I'm going to run a query. All right, and I'm going to keep kind of the amount and the dates. I'll keep all that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a couple fields. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add the item number. So I'm going to double click item number. I'm going to add. We'll just do the item number and the item quantity. All right. So I think if you recall, when we did store visits, there were 395, about 300 some odd store visits. So this is what I've done though. I've tied these two tables together, and if we look at the end here, if we scroll to the end, what we're going to see is here's our table. So our item number. So we already have the visit number. So all we're going to show is we're going to show the item number and the item quantity. And if you'll note here is we have it lists the different tables. So all of the fields that we see here are in store visits. These two items here, all right, they're in the item scan table. So the way you would read this is, okay, it's going to match these two tables together. It's going to identify everything where the visit numbers are the same. All right, and then it's going to go through and it's going to evaluate everything that occurs on 120 or 1/2/2000, and the number of unique items greater than 5, and then it'll give us a list of what those 5 items were. All right, so we'll just let us execute this. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say, give me the datasheet view. All right, so what we've got now is kind of an interesting dynamic. You see the number here is 3861. All right. The dates are still 1-2. All right. But we've added the item number and the item quantity along with the item number or quantity to go with. Now what we do is we can go back. Let's go back and maybe make this a little bit clearer. What I want to do is I want to sort this by. We'll sort it by the visit number. So we'll organize it. And when you run queries, the results, unless you say the result is the result should be sorted, it will return it in whichever way it finds it. All right. So we'll make this an ascending sort, and we'll run it. All right. So what we see now we've grouped everything back together. So this is so for this visit number, there's 11 unique items. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that 9, 10? 11. Oh, yeah, because what happened was there's 10, and then the item quantity of 2 makes it 11. All right, so there's 10 items, but then item quantity of 2. That's where we get our 11 from. All right, and all of these other, so there's 3851. So now what we've done is we've actually for our work on January 2nd, for everything that was greater than 5, we now have the detailed listing of all the items that were purchased and how much was purchased. All right, so let's do one more thing with this. All right, we'll go back to our display. Let's add another table. We'll go to design view. So what I'm going to do here is what I want to create. I want the information about what is the item. So what happens? We have the item number. We don't have the item description. All right, so let's look at the item description. So we've added item description. Once again, now you see the item scan, the number. When we did it, it added the item number to the item number between the scans and the item description. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do primary. We're going to put the primary and the secondary descriptions at the tail end of this thing, all the way at the end. Let's see, here we go. So item description, primary description, up, and another way you can do this, you can actually grab it and drag it and drop it. There's a couple different ways to do it. You can double click on it, or you can click it, and you can either double click on it, or you can grab it and drag it onto the grid down here. Okay, so now let's execute this. So we've got 3 tables that are tied together: visits, scanned, items. We're going to see everything that we want to get a list of all of the items that were purchased by anybody buying more than 5 unique items on the 2nd of January 2000. So I'm going to execute this. All right, and now what we see is this item here is white albacore tuna, right, versus chili without beans versus cinnamon toast crunch versus honey nut Cheerios, et cetera, as we go through. So now we can kind of see, we can get a list of products here. So this is everything that's happening on, once again, 1/2/2000. All right. There's another set of numbers. There was another set of results that would be if we wanted to do the 3rd or the 4th, or if we wanted to do a week. We could say, give us everything. It's either got a transaction date of 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, or 1/5. That's another possibility. There's a lot, so as you can see, there's all sorts of combinations and permutations of, being able to way of organizing and structuring the data, establishing the rules to be able to look things up. All right. So I'm going to do one last piece in this video here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I've got these results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use. We're going to go back to our query design. And what I want to do is I'm going to take this I'm going to take my query here. I'm going to change this query. What I want to do is I want to change this query, and I want to make this we'll go to our design view. I want to change this query. So the way this query is designed, it gives us the results, all right, and just displays the results on the screen. But what I want to do now is I want to take those results and I want to create a whole nother table in the database. All right. So that's where this make table query comes into play. All right. So what you do is you kind of will create a select query, kind of, being able to get a particular result set organized, in a result set. And then what you can do is you do a make, you simply click it as a make table query. And you can say, give me, we'll create a new table. So I'll say, we'll call this table January 2, 2000 results. All right, which is the results that we pulled together across 3 separate tables. I'm going to do an OK. So now this is this is not a select query. This is what we call a make table query. All right, and then I'm going to click run, and it's going to come back and it's going to ask me. It says I'm going to create a table with 3,851 rows into a whole new table, and I'm going to click yes. Then all of a sudden, I have a new table here. And if I double click on this table, what we get is basically what we had all pulled together. All right, everything that happened on January 2nd that was greater than 5 in detail. All right. So this is kind of a first demonstration of some of the types of different things we can do with queries. I'm going to stop here. You can kind of noodle around with this a bit. I'm going to do some other ones. I'm going to put together a couple of other queries as well, and kind of a couple of other videos kind of walking us through some of the stuff so we get some familiarity with this, because it's one of these things, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, and you start understanding the capability and the power of what SQL kind of brings and why it's as useful a tool as it is in the business world. That's about it. Thanks.